All right, tonight we are in Matthew chapter 11. Matthew chapter 11, I think it's chapter 12. Yeah, we're in chapter 12 tonight. Matthew chapter 11, John the Baptist is in prison. He sends messengers to Jesus, probably trying to figure out if Jesus is the Messiah, if he's coming to the rescue, why am I sitting in prison? Jesus sends word back about the miracles, the things that he's been doing. He quotes from the book of Isaiah the prophet that this is what the Messiah will do when he's here. And so he sends word back. But while he's speaking here, verse 19, just as we conclude here, as he talks about John the Baptist and the transfer of ministry. John was the greatest of the Old Testament prophets. He's the last of the Old Testament prophets. And now we're going to move on to the New Testament, and Jesus is sort of the end of the prophets. And he's talking about the reception that John has experienced from primarily the religious elite. Verse 18 of chapter 11 says, "For John came neither eating nor drinking," and they said he has a demon. Remember, he was sort of lived austerely. He ate locusts. He lived in the desert. Wore camel's hair. He was not a wine and dine and a party type of guy. And they said, he's out in the desert speaking. He's got a demon. That's what they said about him. 19, the Son of Man came eating and drinking. And they say, look, a glutton and a winebibber, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, but wisdom is justified by her children. So the tag on John the Baptist was, he's odd, he's demonic because he's just this crazy guy running around in the desert. And then the dig on Jesus was, he hangs around sinners all the time. What kind of religious person, what kind of a Messiah would come and hang around sinners? And he had the reputation of being a glutton and a winebibber. So evidently, wherever Jesus went, there was food on the table, and they enjoyed companionship and meals together. But the thing we want to settle on a little bit, the accusation leveled against him by his antagonists was that he was a friend of tax collectors and sinners, a friend of sinners. And that's what we want to just spend a few minutes this evening talking about. What does it mean? And again, this is his antagonist saying it, so we can't take it for granted that this is their take on it is correct, though it is. But that notion of he's a friend of sinners, what comes to mind when you think of being a friend of sinners? What does it mean? Why would they make this accusation about Jesus? What was it about his life that they would characterize him as he's a friend of sinners? And would people say the same thing about us? That we are a friend of sinners? Yeah, I think one, he enjoys spending time with them. I mean, you don't get you don't get the reputation of being a glutton unless you like food. And so evidently, he spent a certain amount of time eating with lost people. Eating, dining, drinking with them. And so, at the least, he enjoys spending time with them. And so that's a part of it. He enjoys spending time. Why else might we say that? What's that?
He didn't attack them for their sin.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about would lost people feel at home in our services? And when we could talk about that, and we could ask the question, should they? I mean, should a lost person off the street, should they feel welcome? Well, they certainly ought to feel welcome. The question is, after they sit through a service, will they feel at home? Will they feel that it's a church full of people that want to be their friends? I think part of being identified as a friend of sinners, not only he spends time with them, and Paul's talking about not being judgmental on their sin. Even when a lady was caught in sin and brought to him, what did he say? I don't condemn you either. Then he said, go and sin no more. But I think it's the flip side of that as well is sinners feel welcome and comfortable around him. If sinners didn't feel welcome around him, they wouldn't hang out with him. Nobody hangs out with people that make us feel bad about ourselves or make us feel, uneasy. And so evidently Jesus had a way of interacting with sinners that made them feel welcome and comfortable around him. Look at Luke 15:1. And this is right before we get these parables in Luke 15 about all the lost things. The lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. Verse 1 says, then all the tax collectors and the sinners drew near to him to hear him. And the Pharisees and the scribes complained, saying, this man receives sinners and eats with them. So he spoke this parable to them, saying, the parables in chapter 15 are the direct result of the religious people saying, for some reason it's a bad thing that sinners feel comfortable in your presence. Okay? The Pharisees and scribes are complaining, he receives sinners and he eats with them. And they didn't think this was right. And so as a result of that, he goes and launches into these three parables about the sheep, the coin, and the son. And so again, it's a fascinating thing that the religious people who rejected Jesus, one of their main complaints about him was, how can sinners be so comfortable around you? Dane Ortland in the book said, others hold them at arm's length, sinners, but Jesus offers the enticing intrigue of fresh hope. And it's sort of thinking, we've been talking some in leadership lately. Since I've been here, we've always asked the question, are we a friendly church? What's the perception? And the perceptions always go both ways, but what is it that makes a friendly church? It's and again, what we see with Jesus is friendly churches, folks who enjoy spending time with each other, folks who make people feel welcome and comfortable around them. And that's what sinners, their response towards Jesus were. And so we think about, our Jesus being the friends of sin. How many friends do we have? How many friends are we capable of having? I mean, anybody here have 100 friends? We have, if we think about our relational circles, we've got the names we know. Hopefully we know most everybody at church, although, experience says we probably have people we draw a blank on. The people we know, we have the people on the periphery of our affections. Wherever you work, that sphere, that group of folks, there are folks there that you know. There's the middle, and then there's the center, which is if we're fortunate, it's usually a friend or two or a spouse. I mean, how many folks do you have that you would feel comfortable telling them anything in the world about yourself? Many people within the church probably don't have that, maybe outside of their spouse, and sometimes spouses aren't even that close. But the idea of just a mutual delight to be in each other's company. You see couples that have been married for 30, 40, 50 years, and they just genuinely enjoy being with each other, and doesn't matter what they do. It might even be something that I don't enjoy greatly, but because my wife does, I enjoy doing it and being with her. That's sort of how we think of it. And yet Jesus had this reputation of being the friend of sinners, and he had a way of putting people at ease, and people wanted to be around him. And I think it's something for us to think about too. If we're going to be effective in evangelism, we have to be the type of person that lost people want to be around, don't we? I mean, and that's probably a rub, and that's some middle ground there. How do we be people that the lost enjoy being around without being worldly? There's something to think of, because even if a lost person knows that you're befriending them because they're your project, they know that, most people know that a preacher wants to get people saved. And so if I go up to the coffee shop and I think the only reason he's talking to me is he wants me to be saved, he wants to share the gospel with me. And there are people at the coffee shop that they're not open to the gospel being shared with them. I can think of a couple of individuals that have long histories of turning people away, but through being able just to befriend them and show them, you're not my project, I just want to be your friend. I had somebody that he doesn't live around here right anymore. He used to live here, and he emailed me, private messaged me back this winter, and he calls me his preacher, although he's been to our church probably 2 or 3 times. But he said, I could never figure out why you wanted to hang around me. Why, because knowing who he was and what his reputation was, and at times how foul he could be, he couldn't understand why I genuinely enjoyed being around him with, at times, no agenda. And knowing that on his behalf has given me opportunities to share when the times are right. And so, any examples that you have, or illustrations of friendships? And I'll say friendship for friendship's sake, but that ultimately allow us to speak into other people's lives. I mean, if every relationship we have is so that we can share the gospel, that's fine. But think about, it's not popular now, but I can remember when we were going to church in Lafayette, Indiana, and we were invited over by a couple one time. We were new to church. We were invited over and thought, oh, cool, they want to be our friends. And we got there, and it was an Amway presentation. Do you know what we thought immediately? They don't want to be our friends. They want to sell us something. It can be the same way with the gospel. I'm not interested in being your friend. I'll be your friend if you buy what I've got. And in the same way, we may have lost friends, and I don't know how many of these sinners that Jesus ate with ever turned to him in repentance. But regardless of whether they did or not, he had a way of setting them at ease and offering his friendship to them. Any thoughts or comments? Page 115 in the book, Ortland says this: here's the promise of the gospel and the message of the whole Bible. In Jesus Christ, we are given a friend who will always enjoy rather than refuse our presence. Do you ever have friends that they're your friends, but you can only take so much of them? And then you gotta, best way to find that out is go on vacation with them and see what the time period is before you're sick of each other. But in Jesus, we're given a friend who will always enjoy rather than refuse our presence. So Jesus was the friend of sinners. And the difference between him and us is in human relationships, we have a limit to what we can withstand. We have certain lines, you cross those overs and we're no longer friends. Not so with Jesus. Turn to Revelation chapter 3. You see this fascinating in Revelation 3. Revelation 3, the introduction to the apocalypse, and Jesus is speaking to the 7 churches. And in verse 7 of chapter 3, he's writing to verse 17. Verse 17, not 7. The church at Laodicea, that's the one I wanted. The lukewarm church. And we know what he thought of them. We know what happens. Look at verse 17. He's writing to them. He says, Verse 16, so then, because you're lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spew you out of my mouth. Because you say, I am rich, I have become wealthy, I have need of nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. There's the church in Laodicea. They thought they had it all together. They were a lukewarm church, and he refers to them as wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. Is that the type of people you want to surround yourself with? People who are wretched people who are miserable. It's no fun. It's no fun to be around somebody that's always miserable. It's no fun to be around somebody that's always negative. But notice what Jesus says in verse 20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and dine with him, and he with me. And notice that the invitation there, that open invite that to the wretched, poor, miserable, lukewarm church. Jesus is making the first move, and he's knocking, and he says, if you'll open the door, I'll come hang out with you. You open the door, and I will come and dine with you. And so there he is, going out of his way to deepen the acquaintance, to spend time with. And again, just to think that's the Jesus that's waiting on us. He isn't waiting for us to trigger his heart. He's already in that friend mode and there and waiting for us. Richard Sibbes, old Puritan, said, our duty is to accept of Christ's invitation of us. What will we do for him if we will not feast with him? He says, open the door and come in and we'll feast together. A friend here doesn't hold back. One more verse, look in John 15:15. John 15:15. Here's what Jesus tells his disciples the day before he goes to the cross. He says, no longer do I, well, let's go back to 14. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you. As the result of Jesus being their friends, he has revealed to them what his Father has shared with him. Jesus doesn't hold back from his friends. I consider you my friends. To think, never forget Morris Phasig. That was his goal in life. He just wanted to get to the pearly gates and hear, well done, good and faithful. Just to know that Jesus considers us his friend. Another word for friend Ortland brings up in the book is companion. He's a companion. A companion is someone who goes on with you on a journey. Somebody that goes and travels with you, and travels with you so you don't have to be alone. Sibbes again in the book says Jesus is the one who heals our aloneness. But the friendship that Jesus offers is a two-way relationship. It's the one another. Jesus is not the idea of friendship abstractly. He is an actual friend. We talk about friends. We talk about, are we friendly? What is friendly? Jesus is not this ethereal notion of a friend that's abstract. He is an actual friend. And his friendship doesn't make human friendship irrelevant. However, if we don't have the earthly friend, he is still our never-failing friend. No matter what earthly friends might do or we might not have. So just a thought again tonight about Jesus, the friend of sinners. And if the friend of sinners, certainly as he tells his disciples, the friends of those that he's called to himself. Thoughts or comments? Again, as I contemplate the friendship of Jesus for sinners, that should be a take on us, that lost people feel comfortable around us. And it doesn't mean there's not changing. The other thing I was thinking about on the golf course, I'm I'm allowed into the golf circle for two reasons. Number one, they have somebody to pray at lunch when we all stop. It doesn't matter. It could be the most foul guy in the group. We'll sit down for lunch and we'll order, and then he'll nod and say, would you ask the blessing? Okay? So it never fails. But there's also something that's fascinating. I hear very little foul language on the golf course. And from what I understand, it's there all the time. But they don't use it around me. And I've never told anybody to watch their mouth. I've never said anything to anybody about foul language. And so it's not the idea of, well, you're a friend and they feel comfortable around you and so they just revel in their... I would imagine when sinners ate with Jesus, there was an companionship and they enjoyed being with him, but there was a sense that I would imagine he also sort of had an effect on who they were and how they acted. That they could set certain things aside. How does a prostitute eat dinner with Jesus? What does she talk about? And yet she could feel comfortable. Tax collectors, the most despised people in the social strata. But he was a friend. And so it might be a fine line to walk, but something to think about tonight.